America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio West. Since he came down the escalator on June 16th, 2015, Donald Trump has profoundly changed everything. He changed the Republican Party and is still changing it. He changed the Democratic Party and is still changing it. He changed the media, both legacy media and the new alternative media, and indeed the old alternative media, talk radio. He changed it all. And he accelerated trends in some cases, but he changed it all. He is, in fact, the Rosetta Stone of American politics for the past 10 years and probably for the next 10, certainly for the next 4. Now, if you don't know what the Rosetta Stone is, 1799, Napoleon's rampaging around in Egypt and his troops find the Rosetta Stone. Got 3 sets of translations on, three inscriptions in different language. One of those is Egyptian hieroglyphics, which had never before been translated, but one was ancient Greek and the other one was some sort of Egyptian text that was somewhat understood. But the French took it back, and the Brits finally got it when they got the capitulation of Napoleon. I don't know if it was the first or the second time. It's in the British Museum. I've seen it. And it's fascinating. And it allowed scholars to understand what's going on in the hieroglyphics because they understood ancient Greek and the other language. So you got 3 translations of one thing, and they're pretty much the same. It's a decree from a pharaoh from 196 BC. It's like the Rosetta Stone unlocked everything. Trump unlocks everything. Understand the most important thing he's done in the Republican Party. He hasn't moved it right. He hasn't moved it isolationist. He's toughened it up. He's toughened it up in the way that Tom Cotton toughened things up, in the way Mitch McConnell toughened things up when Mitch McConnell said no hearings, no votes after Justice Scalia died. Leader McConnell kind of led the way, prefigured the Trump toughening up. Tom Cotton has always been blunt, specific, and direct. Tough. Donald Trump is tough. Very, very resilient. And what you see the Republicans doing, they confirmed John Ratcliffe today overwhelmingly. They're just not putting up with stuff anymore. They're tougher because of Donald Trump. They aren't necessarily more or less conservative, more or less interventionist, more or less isolation. They're just tougher about whatever they're going to do. They're going to get together on probably one big, beautiful bill. I don't know about that, but whatever they decide to do, they're going to do, and they're going to hang together rather than to hang separately. What did Donald Trump do to the Democrats? He unhinged them in many respects. They were already going left, and they were already becoming indifferent to norms. Remember, Harry Reid broke the filibuster using the nuclear option in 2013. So Harry Reid actually began the radicalization, but Donald Trump's victory in 2016 was so shocking it just destabilized Democrats. Remember Nancy Pelosi doing the out-of-the-norm stuff behind the President of the United States during the State of the Union, tearing up an official document of the United States out of Gondov archives, tore it up? That's just sort of symbolic. Then when Democrats beat Donald Trump in 2020, they established a J6 committee, and they violated every norm, making it illegitimate, meaning that Nancy Pelosi refused to allow then Kevin McCarthy, then minority leader, to select the ranking member and the members of the minority and their own staff. So it was a one-sided show trial with absolutely no persuasive effect. So he destabilized the Democrats, and they've gone increasingly to the left. He destabilized Joe Biden, who really didn't have the capacity to even believe anything. He's infirm from the beginning, but his staff was very hard left, and Trump drove the Democrats further to the left than they already were. Meanwhile, the Republicans were getting tougher. Republican coalition has gotten a little bit bigger, but it's still the Reagan coalition. It's still there. HW didn't add to that coalition. W did. He added a few people who believe in American military might in the age of terror, but Trump vastly expanded the Republican coalition. And his executive order rollout has been amazing. And a district court enjoined his executive order on birthright citizenship, and that's fine. I told my law students yesterday, that's going to happen, then the Ninth Circuit will uphold it, and it will be up to SCOTUS, and I think SCOTUS will say birthright citizenship was, in fact, the public meaning as generally understood and the practice in 1868 when the 14th Amendment was ratified, and that they will reject the executive order and uphold birthright citizenship as it's been practiced in the United States for the past 100X years. I think that's what's going to happen. I'm not sure. But I think that's what's going to happen. Donald Trump explains, though, that the Republicans are willing to do this and not complain. They're willing to say, okay, he makes the weather, we're going to support him. They're going to mostly support his nominees. I don't know that everyone will get through, but most, if not all, will get through. But the Senate is still the Senate, and the Senate retains its traditional prerogatives. You got to get 51 votes. Let me also add, Donald Trump is the Rosetta Stone for understanding what's happened in the media. He's destroyed legacy media because legacy media lost its mind in tandem for different reasons than the Democrats did. But they lost their mind. They hate Trump. They cannot readjust. They cannot actually find people to defend Trump's policies or his persona or what he's done. They can't cover him. They don't understand him, and therefore they're losing audience. Alternative media has arisen as a result of this, particularly with new technologies like podcasting. And I refer you to Ruthless Podcast that Josh Holmes is going to join me after the break. I'm going to test my theory. Trump as the Rosetta Stone. Explains everything. He just explains everything. I'll talk to Josh Holmes about that. But what I want you to understand, the most important thing he's done to Republicans is fight, fight, fight. Remember what he said after he was shot in the head at Butler. He stood up, put up his fist, and said, fight, fight, fight. And it occurred to me just this morning, this is really what the GOP has become. It's just become tougher. The moderates are tougher. The center-right people are tougher. The conservatives are tougher. The isolationists are tougher. Everyone is tougher and more adamant about what they believe, but it's a tougher party because Donald Trump is tougher. Now, he accelerated the trend that actually goes all the way back to Clarence Thomas and the confirmation hearings then, of fighting back. Justice Thomas fought back, high-tech lynching. Then we saw Donald Trump back Brett Kavanaugh, and Brett Kavanaugh fight back in that ambush. Republicans have learned they have to be tough, and they have to fight back if they want to get anything done, if they want to save the Constitution. This is a Constitution-driven political program. I'm a center-right conservative, but I am a believer. I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Christian constitutionalist. Husband, father, grandfather. All of that is just my DNA. The DNA of the Republican Party is still basically the same. It's gotten bigger because of Donald Trump selling and changed. Donald Trump is a common sense, tough Republican. He's Nelson Rockefeller without the art collection, and he won the presidency. Nelson Rockefeller couldn't do that. Nelson Rockefeller was more moderate, and Donald Trump is more common sense. What do I need to do to fix this problem? And he'll spend money like Rocky would spend money. He's a big spender, and he just wants to solve problems. And he let Davos have it today. I'll play that later in the program. 14 minutes of bang, bang, bang. Davos, you are irrelevant to me. It basically became that. And I'm glad he did that. But I just want you to understand, Trump has changed everyone. Now, what I don't know is what to do about people who are afflicted with TDS. Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. And people are addicted to the dopamine that comes with the outrage that they express over Donald Trump. And I don't know that they can recover. They need a 12-step program for woke people and a 12-step program for Trump derangement syndrome. Just basically a 12-step program for putting political perspective into place. It's a long game in American history. It got started in this April 250 years ago on the fields of Lexington and Concord when the Redcoats were marching to Concord to take the Minutemen's arsenal away, and the Minutemen assembled and they fought back, and the war began. Even though the Declaration of Independence doesn't come until the following July of 1776, we're in the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the American Revolution in a couple of months. And they were tough people, and they fought the long game, the revolutionaries. We are not a revolutionary country anymore. We're a conservative country, by and large. But we're a tough country. Very, very tough, very resilient. We've seen and gone through a great deal, and we're going to see and go through a great deal more. Donald Trump's tapping into that. And the Republicans have figured out that the McConnell approach on the Scalia vacancy is the approach that Trump embodies on everything, and that they are adopting across the board, and it appeals to a majority of Americans. Trump won big. Very, very big. And that's why the EOs are rolling out. Now, a district court enjoined the birthright citizenship. I told my law students yesterday that was going to happen. Ninth Circuit will uphold it. We'll go to the Supreme Court. He expects all this because he built the trampoline in the first term, a conservative originalist Supreme Court. And now we're going to jump on it and see what it produces. Josh Holmes joins me next. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Josh Holmes, one of the fellows at the Ruthless Podcast. Josh, welcome to the golden age of America on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good to see you.
Oh, Hugh, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It's nice to be on with such a, star-studded afternoon guy now.
Oh, we have got so much to talk about, Josh. I've been telling my law students if they really want to understand how politics works, from professionals who work in that area, go listen to the fellows at Ruthless Podcast, as I do every single broadcast start to finish. And Josh, as a result, I'm willing to test a theory on you, and if you don't accept it, reject it. My theory is that since Donald Trump came down the escalator in June 2015, he has been the accelerant and the Rosetta Stone for both the Republicans, the Democrats, and all of media, both legacy media and alternative media. Basically, he made the Republicans tough. He absolutely drove the Democrats crazy. And he made a lot of the legacy media irrelevant. And he made people like you and Ruthless Podcast, people like me, kind of old alternative media, radio, relevant. What do you think of Donald Trump as the Rosetta Stone that explains everything in American politics for the past 10 years?
Oh, it's so good. It's such a good analogy. Honestly, Hugh, I think you're right. No question about it. But two, look, Donald Trump has taken over the entire culture. It's not just Republican politics. It's not conservatives. It's whatever. I mean, you just take the case of like DEI, for example. I mean, we're 4 years removed from no one on the Republican side, conservative or whatever, even mentioning the three letters DEI for fear that they would be canceled, right? I mean, as we found out now, the vast majority of Americans think this is a racist policy. It's been a racist policy. It's been that way since the very beginning, but nobody would talk about it. Nobody would do anything about it. No one could say that the sky was blue. And Donald Trump, on issue after issue, has, in a plain spoken manner, without fear, been able to give life to an awful lot of concerns that Americans have had. You observe things in front of your face in the mainstream media and every institution in this country, whether it is media, entertainment, corporate America, every big education, every big thing in this country has told you you're not seeing what you're seeing. And if you have any doubt about that, well, maybe you're a racist too. And Donald Trump just transcends that. He's a pop culture icon long before he was a president. And once he's become president, he just gives life to an awful lot of thoughts and concerns that the left has worked very, very hard to prevent us from talking about. And so, look, I think you're right. He's taken over everything by force of personality and also his perseverance, Hugh. I mean, I think if any one of us were under the kind of scrutiny he was, certainly fighting for his freedom at some level under the incredible political prosecutions that he's endured over the last couple of years, most of us would be in a shell, unable to speak. It would reduce us to puddles. But he just keeps coming back. He keeps coming back. And I think he's part of that whole old adage about the only way to really lose in America is to quit. And he never quit. He kept coming back, and I think we're all reaping the benefits of that at this point.
I think he's made the Republican Party generally not more conservative or more liberal or more isolationist or more. He just made it tougher so that everyone is tougher. And in the first segment of today's program, I paid homage to Leader Mitch McConnell for actually being the first hint. Clarence Thomas did it when he fought back. And then Mitch McConnell said, no hearings, no votes when Justice Scalia died. That was tough. And then Donald Trump has just toughened everyone up now. What do you think? Everybody is tougher and more resilient after Donald Trump, both his first term, then the lawfare, and then especially getting shot in the head in Butler and standing up and saying, fight, fight, fight. Republicans fight now the way that Leader McConnell fought for that seat.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, it's ability to call a spade and not be worried about the ramifications. I mean, for so long, and the media now is just completely broken. You know that better than anybody, Hugh. It's a broken enterprise, no longer serving the interests of the American people. Propaganda outfit at its each and every one of these things, and his ability to give that a full showing in front of the American people without fear of what they would say to him sort of unmasked all of that. And in doing so, has made everyone an awful lot tougher. You're looking at some of this happened with the Kavanaugh hearings, but certainly happening with Pete Hegseth right now. We're unearthing 11th hour allegations from an ex-wife of Pete Hegseth's brother. And instead of that being problematic, as it would have for 30 years in Republican politics, I can't imagine that there's a better whip operation that you could invent in Republican politics than having something like that drop and having the New York Times, NBC News, all of these things print stories about the allegation without even containing CBS News, without even containing the fact that the alleged victim denies it ever happened. But they did. And what that communicates in Republican politics, thanks to Donald Trump, is, man, we got to get on board because these people they're terrible. They're ruining everything about the information flow to the American people. And I think it's a great service.
And they are incompetent. Democrats are incompetent. I've been out in California teaching for since the beginning of the year, and I'll be here till April. And the fires, we had evacuees living with us for 10 days, and they were welcome guests. But, I mean, shocking levels of incompetence in California. And Trump said, I think to Sean Hannity last night, no money for California until they fix their water problems and get the sprinklers to work and the hydrants to flow and the reservoirs to fill. I think that's tough love. I think that California needs that. And then, again, common sense. We've got about a minute to the break, Josh, and then I want to talk a little inside baseball with you about Ruthless.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, look, tough love is the name of the game with Donald Trump at this point. But the thing is, he's got the American people with him at this point. And you have the Gavin Newsoms of the world and everybody else telling you, everything is upside down. He's straightened it out for everybody. And I think with the goodwill that he has built amongst the American people, you can see playing out in the first week of his administration, where he's doing things that were previously incredibly controversial. And at this point, pretty well received.
Yeah. Don't go anywhere, America, because I'm going to ask Josh to explain in brief why you want to go back and listen to the Ruthless podcast after the disaster, because in it, they got into the monetization of grief and the monetization of compassion. And they unfolded for me as only political pros. That's why you got to listen to Ruthless podcast. They're political professionals. They're operators. They take clients on. They get them elected. And they know how this works. I've never done that. I don't know anything about that. I can tell you how to run a radio show and a television show and how to teach a con law class and how to get an endangered species Section 10A and Section 7 permit. But I have no idea what negative polarization meant or how Gavin was grifting when he was given. I was just so aghast after I listened. But it's the only kind of thing you get if you go and like and subscribe the Ruthless podcast. And then you're going to find Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, Comfortably Smug, and my guest, Josh Holmes, talking twice a week about the actual nuts and bolts of how it works. And at the same time, providing cultural commentary. But I love the nuts and bolts. Coming back during the break. I'm back with Josh Holmes, who is along with his three fellas. The four fellas make up the Ruthless podcast. Josh, your podcast, After the Fires, when Gavin Newsom and the Pod Bros were given, I was fascinated. And it's the kind of stuff I don't know. I can tell you about what's going on in Israel and Russia and China. I had no idea about negative polarization and monetizing the email. Would you tell people why you guys know this stuff?
Well, I mean, look, it is what we happen to do for a living, and you monitor trends over a period of time and what people react to, what makes people donate, what makes people throw their support behind certain candidates. And in the era of Trump, negative polarization is a really big deal. In other words, are you making the right enemies, right? And it's not so much of having that hope and change that Obama talked about, or the place called hope that Bill Clinton talked about. as much as it is just driving negative energy against President Trump and having the reaction flat back on you. And the more that you're attacked at some level, the more that core progressive base reacts to it. And what they do is they double down on their support for people who are getting attacked by who they see as the right enemies. I mean, look, Donald Trump has benefited a lot from this. You saw this play out during the course of all of the political trials and all of that legal consequence that he suffered over the last year, where Republicans rallied to his side based upon what they saw as a corrupt left-wing prosecution of him everywhere from DOJ on down to New York and Georgia. And Democrats have the same thing going. And it is an unfortunate reality of the politics that we live in today, where negative polarization is a powerful, powerful force that helps sort of insulate some of these more bizarre figures on the left-hand side.
And then, 1 minute, Josh, you get the email address from someone who has moved to help the victims, and you monetize. I had no idea you could sell. What'd you say, $1.10 for an email address for someone who contributes? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so the small dollar machine, and not to get too detailed, but the small dollar machine is something that Democrats have had a huge advantage on over the years. And part of the reason is that they have this constellation of C4s that raises money from people based on niche issues that they care about. And so, the more specific the issue that you care about, the more likely you're to get money. And it all gets kind of backloaded into this outfit called Act Blue, which is, the best way to think of it is it's a clearinghouse. It's a processor for all Democratic Party donations. But if you're raising money, whether it's, you're anti-guns, or if you're, pro transgender, or you're whatever, you're ingesting all of that data to make it easier for them to donate not once but multiple times. And what Gavin Newsom did, and what others have done, is
Josh, don't tell them. Don't tell them. Make them listen. Make them listen. Not only are we out of time, but make them listen. Ruthless Podcast. Go back 2 episodes, get to the California fires episode, and learn something, because the fellas are pros. Josh Holmes, thank you, friend. Always love talking to Ruthless Podcast fellas.